Thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome friends to Past Quest. The private dining room at Le Bernardin was everything Dad had dreamed of for his 60th birthday. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over pristine white tablecloths, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline, and the kind of impeccable service that comes with Michelin 3-star dining. The evening had cost me $3,000 to arrange, but seeing the joy on my father's face as he savored his favorite lobster dish made every penny worth it. "This is incredible, sweetheart," Dad said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I can't believe you managed to get us a private room here. Don't they have a 6-month waiting list?" "Something like that," I replied with a smile, not mentioning that I'd gotten a reservation through my company's corporate account, the same account that had catered 3 major events here in the past month, totaling over $500,000. My older sister, Amanda, set down her wine glass with a sharp clink against the table. At 32, she was a successful marketing director at a prestigious Manhattan firm, and she never let anyone forget it. Her husband, Derek, an investment banker, nodded in agreement as she spoke. "Jessica, we need to have a serious conversation," Amanda said, her voice taking on that condescending tone I'd grown to hate over the years. "On Dad's birthday?" I asked, hoping to deflect whatever criticism was coming. "Especially on Dad's birthday. Look around this room. Do you have any idea how much this dinner is costing? Le Bernardin doesn't do casual dining. The wine alone probably costs more than your monthly rent." Mom, elegant in her pearl necklace and navy dress, looked uncomfortable. "Amanda, maybe this isn't the time." "No, Mom. Someone needs to say it." Amanda's voice was getting louder, drawing glances from our waiter who was preparing the next course. "Jessica is 26 years old, living in a studio apartment in Queens, working some vague consulting job that none of us understand. And yet, she's constantly trying to pay for expensive dinners, buying elaborate gifts, acting like she has money she clearly doesn't have." "I do have money," I said quietly. Derek laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Really? What's your annual income, Jessica?" "Because Amanda makes $180,000 a year plus bonuses. I make $350,000. We know what real money looks like." "Stop pretending you have money, Jessica," Amanda continued, her voice now carrying across the dining room. "It's embarrassing for all of us. You're going to end up in debt trying to keep up appearances." My younger brother, Michael, 24 and fresh out of his MBA program, nodded seriously. "Amanda's right. I've been tracking my expenses since graduation, and I know exactly what it costs to live in New York. There's no way a freelance consultant can afford dinners like this." "Freelance consultant?" I repeated, genuinely confused. "Whatever it is you do with computers," Amanda said dismissively. "The point is, you need to stop this fantasy and start living within your means. Dad's birthday dinner should be at a nice chain restaurant, not the most expensive place in Manhattan." Dad looked stricken. "If this is too much." "It's not too much for me," I said firmly. "This is exactly where I wanted to celebrate Dad's birthday." "With what money?" Amanda demanded. "Your credit cards are probably maxed out paying for this charade." "I'm not using credit cards." Derek pulled out his phone. "You know what? Let's settle this right now. Show us your bank account balance. If you really have money, prove it." "Derek," Mom said sharply. "That's inappropriate." "No, it's necessary," Amanda said. "Jessica needs a reality check before she ruins her financial future trying to impress us." I looked around the table at my family, these people I loved dearly, who had supported me through college and celebrated my achievements, but who had somehow concluded that I was living beyond my means and heading for financial ruin. "You really think I can't afford this dinner?" "Yes. We know you can't afford this dinner," Amanda said. "The question is whether you're finally ready to admit it." The waiter approached our table with the dessert course, an elaborate chocolate souffle that was Dad's favorite. As he set it down, I could see him trying to pretend he hadn't heard the increasingly tense conversation. "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse, "let me prove you right." I pulled out my Black American Express card, The invitation-only Centurion card that required a $10,000 annual fee and had no preset spending limit. The card was made of titanium and had a distinctive weight that somehow felt reassuring in my hand. "Oh, please," Amanda rolled her eyes. "A black card. How much did you pay for that fake?" "It's not fake, Jessica," Derek said with exaggerated patience. "Real black cards require you to charge at least $250,000 per year. They don't just give them to anyone. I know what they require." I handed the card to our waiter, who accepted it professionally despite the obvious family tension. "For the full bill, please." "Of course, Miss Anderson." As he walked away, Amanda shook her head sadly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so desperate to appear successful that you're using fake credit cards. Do you have any idea what the penalty is for credit card fraud?" "It's not fraud." "Then why are you so nervous?" Michael observed. "You look like you're about to throw up." I wasn't nervous about the card being fake. I was nervous about what was going to happen when it got declined for an entirely different reason. A reason my family would never expect. 5 minutes later, our waiter returned looking apologetic and slightly confused. "Ms. Anderson, I'm sorry, but there seems to be an issue with your card." The table fell silent. "An issue?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea what the issue was. "It was declined. Would you like to try another payment method?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then Amanda burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Jessica, your fake black card got declined. This is priceless." Derek was laughing too. "A fake Centurion card that doesn't even work. That's a new low." "I told you she was pretending," Amanda said to our parents, who looked mortified. "Now we're all going to be stuck with this bill because Jessica had to play dress up." Michael was shaking his head. "Jess, this is seriously messed up. Using fake credit cards, lying about having money." "I wasn't lying," I said, but my voice was lost in their laughter and criticism. "Ma'am," the waiter said quietly, "should I bring the bill to someone else?" "Just give me a minute," I said, pulling out my phone. "What are you doing?" Amanda asked, still giggling. "Calling your credit card company to ask why your fake card doesn't work." I was about to respond when a man in an expensive suit hurried into our private dining room. Funerals are supposed to be moments of reflection, occasions where families gather not just to mourn a death but to celebrate a life. But not every family is the same, and not every story unfolds in a traditional way. Some funerals are quiet and dignified, filled with tears and prayers. Others, however, become the stage for secrets, grudges, and shocking revelations. This story is about one such funeral. It begins with an absence, a silence so heavy that it seemed to echo louder than any words ever could. It was the funeral of my grandmother, a woman who had lived her life with bitterness etched into every wrinkle of her face. She was feared, not loved. Respected, perhaps, but never truly admired. And so, when the priest called upon the family to say a few words about her, no one stood up. No cousin, no uncle, no aunt, not even her own children. The silence grew so unbearable that I, almost without thinking, volunteered. At that moment, I had no idea that the simple decision to speak at her funeral would lead me into a labyrinth of lies, greed, betrayal, and ultimately, a fraudulent lawsuit that threatened to ruin my life. The eulogy that never should have been. I was 32 years old at the time, not particularly close to my grandmother, but not her enemy either. I had kept my distance, as most of the family had, but I still carried enough decency to believe that no one deserved to leave this world without a kind word spoken on their behalf. So I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked to the podium. The crowd of about 50 relatives and acquaintances looked at me with curiosity. Some raised their eyebrows, others smirked knowingly, as if waiting for me to fail. I cleared my throat and began to speak. But instead of truth, I chose fiction. I painted a picture of my grandmother as a selfless woman who had given everything to her family, who had raised her children with care, who had lived not for herself but for others. I spoke of her sacrifices, her supposed generosity, her quiet strength. It was all a lie. None of what I said was real. The truth was that my grandmother had been cruel, manipulative, and, at times, vindictive. She had controlled her children with fear, turned relatives against one another, and hoarded wealth with iron fists. But at that moment, I thought I was doing the right thing, preserving the dignity of the dead, sparing the family further shame. When I finished, people clapped politely. Some even wiped away fake tears. The priest nodded in approval. And then, something unexpected happened. The lawyer's smile. As the crowd dispersed after the service, I noticed a man in a black suit lingering near the coffin. He had sharp features, silver hair, and eyes that scanned the room like a hawk searching for prey. After a while, he approached me. "You spoke beautifully," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Your grandmother would be proud." I thanked him, though uneasily. "I'm her lawyer," he continued, pulling out a card. "She left behind some very specific instructions. And after hearing your words today, I believe you might play a more important role than you realize." I stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He leaned in slightly. "All in good time. You'll hear from me soon." And with that, he walked away, leaving me with a knot in my stomach. The shocking will. A week later, the family was summoned to the lawyer's office for the reading of my grandmother's will. We gathered in a large, oak-paneled room with leather chairs and heavy curtains that blocked out the daylight. The air was thick with anticipation. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat and began. "My client, the late Mrs. Eleanor Grant, has left very specific instructions regarding the distribution of her estate. It is a considerable fortune. Properties, investments, and assets totaling over $3 million. Gasps echoed through the room. Few of us had known just how wealthy she truly was. "But," the lawyer continued, "the inheritance comes with conditions." One by one, he read out the clauses. Each child, grandchild, and relative had to fulfill certain tasks or prove certain merits to claim their share. Some conditions were bizarre. One cousin had to quit gambling, another had to repair a broken marriage, an aunt had to donate to charity. And then came my turn. "To my grandson, who so lovingly spoke at my funeral," the lawyer read, pausing for dramatic effect, "I leave the sum of $1 million. But only if his words were genuine. If proven false, this gift shall be revoked, and instead, legal action shall be taken for defamation of character." The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, filled with shock, envy, and in some cases amusement. The family's backlash. The whispers began almost immediately. "He lied," one cousin hissed. "Everyone knows she was a tyrant." "He only spoke to get attention," another added. "That money should go to us," cried an aunt, her voice dripping with venom. I tried to protest. I didn't know she would. How could I? But no one cared. The family had found their scapegoat. To them, I was a fraud, a liar who had tried to profit off the dead. The lawyer remained calm. "The estate has hired investigators. They will determine the truth of your statements. If they find your eulogy to be false, not only will you lose the inheritance, but the family has the right to file a lawsuit for damages against you." My head spun. A fraudulent lawsuit. Over a speech I never meant to be taken seriously. The investigation. For weeks I lived under scrutiny. Investigators interviewed relatives, dug through family records, and even spoke to neighbors who had known my grandmother. Of course, the truth came out quickly. She had not been generous, kind, or selfless. My speech had been nothing more than a fabrication. The family seized upon this like wolves. A group of cousins banded together and announced they were suing me for attempting to defraud them of their rightful inheritance. The lawsuit claimed I had knowingly lied to manipulate the will in my favor. I was stunned. What had begun as a simple attempt at kindness had spiraled into a legal nightmare. The courtroom drama. The case went to court within months. The family's lawyer painted me as a cunning opportunist who had stood at the funeral podium with dollar signs in my eyes. They claimed I had exploited the solemnity of death to enrich myself. My own lawyer argued otherwise. My client did not know about the will. He acted out of decency, not deceit. The deceased herself created this bizarre condition, setting him up for failure. If anyone is guilty of fraud, it is the manipulation built into this will. The judge listened patiently, but the damage was done. The family's hatred was so intense that every testimony felt like another dagger in my back. Even distant relatives who had not spoken to my grandmother in years came forward to smear me. For a while, it seemed inevitable that I would lose. The twist in the tale. But then, something extraordinary happened. During cross-examination, my lawyer asked Mr. Harrison, the estate attorney, about the origin of the will. First, he gave vague answers. But under pressure, cracks began to show. Finally, it was revealed. The will had been tampered with. Yes, someone had forged sections of it. The condition about my eulogy had not been written by my grandmother at all. It had been inserted later. The court erupted in chaos. The family members who had been so eager to accuse me suddenly found themselves suspects. Investigators were brought back in, and within weeks, it was discovered that 2 of my cousins had conspired with a junior staff member at the law firm to alter the will. Their goal had been to disqualify me from inheritance and secure a larger share for themselves. In the end, justice was served. The cousins were disinherited entirely. The fraudulent lawsuit collapsed, and the court declared me free of all charges. But I declined the $1 million. After everything I had endured, I wanted no part of my grandmother's poisoned legacy. The moral of the story. This tale of the fraudulent lawsuit teaches several powerful lessons. Greed corrupts everything. Money has the power to turn families into enemies and funerals into battlegrounds. Truth always surfaces. Lies, whether mine at the funeral or my cousin's in the will, eventually unravel. Kindness without honesty is dangerous. My decision to lie in my grandmother's eulogy, though well-meaning, set the entire disaster in motion. Family can betray more deeply than strangers. When inheritance is at stake, blood ties often dissolve. Peace matters more than wealth. By rejecting the inheritance, I freed myself from the chains of greed that had destroyed my family. Conclusion. The story of my grandmother's funeral and the fraudulent lawsuit that followed remains the most surreal chapter of my life. What began as an innocent attempt to honor the dead became a storm of greed, deception, and betrayal. In the end, I walked away not richer in money but wiser in spirit. I learned that sometimes the greatest inheritance is not wealth or property, but freedom, from lies, from greed, and from the toxic legacies of those who came before us.
Thanks for watching Past Quest. If you enjoyed the journey into history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories from the past. See you in the next quest.